Okay, so I'm really excited to bring you guys this no-code build today. This is one I've used for years. I've implemented it at 3 other companies. It's an issue log. And to me, issues are so important because it shows where a company is failing. So by building a proper issue log, not only do you solve the issues and allow traceability and an audit log, but you also create this repository of information that you can search as you re-engage with those issues, as you have those same issues again, and as new people come on board that have never experienced those issues. It's a way to really create a learning organization. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build a no-code app using 3 different applications. The core of it's going to be Trello, and we're going to use Trello to basically collect information and use it as a digital form. We're then going to use some of the automatic features and customization features of Trello to gather extra information and to be able to start to tag some of this. The second step is going to be connecting Trello to Slack. We're going to use Slack as kind of this communicator with the company. A lot of times owners and managers, CEOs, inspectors, they all want to be aware of information, but they don't necessarily want to be pegged with that information all the time through emails or texts or people stopping by their office. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a special channel in Slack. We're going to connect Trello over to Slack, and any kind of significant update that happens on any issue is going to hit that channel. That way, all you have to do is go to that channel, scroll through, and you'll get a full update of what's been happening in the quality lab as far as issues occurring and how we're trying to resolve them. So this was really useful with our management team as we traveled across the globe, because as we were visiting suppliers, visiting customers, and moving around, at any time, we pulled out our phone, opened up Slack, we would scroll through the quality issue channel and see a full list of all the updates that had happened, who had done them, when they occurred, and we could jump in if we wanted to or just let it continue to be resolved. Then the last step we're going to do is basically going to connect it to a reporting software. The reporting software will allow us to track things like what is the current quality backlog, what's the cycle time on how long it takes us to solve issues, how long does an issue sit before it gets resolved, how long does it sit before it gets resigned, how long does it take to resolve. We can even track things like how many parts are in the cage right now, or how many of our issues end in a rejection versus being able to be used. So we're going to get a lot of statistics. We can then create dashboards with those statistics, as well as have those statistics emailed out in reports. So you might have one that goes to the quality manager on the state of the system, and another different report that goes to the CEO that's just got a list of things like the backlog and the cycle time that gives him just an idea of how busy our quality lab is without all the details that the quality manager might want. And so by using these 3 tools and a little bit of ingenuity, we're going to create basically a quality tracker that communicates everything, gives us an audit log, and really helps us to be able to design a system that can scale with a growing company. All right, so let's dig in, and I'm really excited to build this one. Okay, so let's dive right in here. The first thing that we need to do, this is kind of a Trello empty screen here, is we're going to create a board. A board is kind of like our mini app. This is where everything's going to be contained. And because what I'm going to do is issues, I'm going to make it red. You can do pictures and backgrounds. The other thing, though, is just for the use of this example, I'm going to make this for parts. So it's going to be part issues. This can be issues related to anything really, software design, problems with the company, any kind of problem or issue you want to keep track of. But in this case, I'm going to use parts. So this is going to be a board to track part issues, share that information globally throughout the company, and give us a repository that we can search later on as we solve issues to figure out how we solve them. This can help with training and scalability, everything like that. So let's create this board. And what we're going to do with this board is create kind of this Kanban, this flow that goes through the entire process. So we have to think about what is that flow? Like when an issue is created to when it is totally resolved, what are the stages that they all go through? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to include, first of all, the fact that we have an issue, we would create it initially in that list. And after that, we assign it to someone to work on. It might sit in there for a while, depending on how busy that person is. The next thing is they would be working on it. So they submit it and then completed. The reason I have one between in progress and completed is often you might submit an issue and finish it on your end, but obviously your customer, your supplier needs to also agree with you. We don't want those to be stuck in progress because we want to be able to see the ones that are actually being worked on by our company differentiated from the ones that are not yet completed but have been submitted to wherever the root cause is. And then we're going to create one more called template. And then template is we're going to kind of keep our template card. We don't want to keep it in the middle of one of these lists that will throw things off. So we're going to keep it right here in this list called template. And to create a template card, all you need to do is create basically a card and go into it and make it a template. This is now a template card. So what does that mean exactly? It means if I'm over here going to create a new issue, I can click, instead of clicking a new card, I can click this right here, which is basically create card from template. And then boom, I can see all my templates. So if you have different types of problems, you might want, a part template. You might want to create another one that has to do with processes, process issue. And then you can create another template from that. Go over, boom, you got part number, you got process issue. You can create these templates on the go. So let's go back and start to sketch out what this form kind of looks like, because each one of these cards is really just a digital form to collect information on the issue and then track activity as we resolve the issue. By doing that, we'll have a really nice history of how we solved issues and kind of what we went through and the decision processes that we made. So I'm going to delete this. And let's start here. And the first thing that I think we want is on the title, we're going to want the part number and let's say the revision. I've done them where I put the supplier and customer in there too, but with how good the search is in Trello, you don't need everything in the title. The search can search all inside the Trello board too, which I'll show you in a little bit. So we'll say we want the part number and the revision. And now we're going to put some descriptions in here. With Trello, what's pretty neat about the description field is it uses Markdown. So you can add bold and emphasis using asterisks and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is actually use some of that. I'm going to make bold and I'm going to say, you can put the word issue. In other words, what is the issue? And when I save that, you'll see the issue is bold. And so then under that, you can put in italics. Let's try it without it, see how it looks. We're going to say, please describe the issue. Now we save that. We can see it asks, please describe the issue with the part. And so what we're going to do is we're going to basically write a little form in this description of the information we'd like to collect. So we'd like to know what is the issue. We'd like to know, what I do is I help the user of the form think through possible solutions. This has to do with scaling. I don't want everything to have to go through me or through the manager. So if I can have the inspector or whoever's filling out this form think through some of the initial parts of making the correct decision, it will really help, scale the business. So what I do is I basically write the questions, the first questions that I'm going to be asking. And by having them fill it out, they'll have to think through it and possibly gather information that I'll need to have them gather anyway. But now they'll put it in the card and they'll have it all ready to go. And so what I'll say is basically some questions to answer. And then you can do a bulleted list. You can say what happens if we ship this part to the customer. And another one that I'm going to have to go through is what happens if we don't ship this part. So what I'm getting at here is often when you're siloed, you're just a quality or you're just warehouse or you're just sales, you don't see the whole picture. And so the question is, So, somebody might just say, oh, well, why don't we just ship it anyway? Or why don't we just call them and ask them? Or why don't we don't ship it? And they don't think about all the second and third order consequences. If you think about it, what happens if we ship this part? It'll shut their line down. It could have a bunch of negative consequences. And if you don't specifically ask that question, even though it's obvious, their mind isn't there. Their mind is complete this part, get it off my desk and get to the next part. So we have them think through what happens if we ship the part. Okay, we might have a line down or, nothing potentially, but it's not as we agreed. This helps us assess the risk of shipping, right? So if nothing's going to happen, maybe we can still ship it. But if the answer is line down for the customer, obviously we're not going to want to ship it. Likewise, on the other side, what happens if we don't ship it? A lot of times a quality guy might just say, hey, we're just not going to ship it. It's not good. Well, what happens? Are we 8 weeks out from the next delivery? Is it possible to even get a replacement part? Is this going to shut their line down for weeks? Obviously, that's not acceptable. So again, just helping somebody think through how to make a decision and ask questions that will bring those ideas into their head before they have to make the decision. What do I do, right? So what do I do is predicated on all these other things. We're just going to help them drive through that in this form. So what happens if we don't ship the part? Another thing that we might ask is, what's the root cause? Actually, I'd like to add this under issue. And for root cause, I like them to do it outside of this and then put it in. And so we'll just put that right here. Please perform root cause using, and then you can give them, is it a 5Y or an 8D? And attach. And you'll see the power of attaching files soon. The other thing that I might want are list possible solutions. The reason I like to list possible solutions as we come up with them, so we may come up with them in the comments as we discuss things. You'll see that in a little bit. But when we search this later, I want to see all the things that we thought about doing and then why we didn't do them. It'll really help in the future when we have similar problems with similar parts to be able to resolve them much faster. Also, it'll be less training as we get more and more people. They can look up parts and keywords and suppliers and say, oh, last time this happened with X supplier, here's how we resolved it. I see all the options that they looked at. I see the one they picked. This is good enough. I'm actually going to use this. So it helps scale complex decision making, and it really de-risks scaling the company. So list possible solutions. And again, this is an ongoing list. As we resolve this, we're going to want to list all the kinds of things that we looked at. Another thing that I'd like to do list the risks of the possible solutions. So I'm doing two things here. I'm building a no-code app that will help us track this, but I'm also trying to think about how does this fit into our process? How does this help really streamline the operation? Not just collect information and be done with it and have some cool integrations, but really help the operation work better, last longer. So when I say streamline, I'm talking about not just speed, but quality. So that's why I'm kind of walking you through both what we're doing on the app side, but also building it into this no-code app. And eventually there's going to be a suggestion. And I usually like to break the suggestions down into short-term and long-term. They're usually different. Short-term is how do we get out of this week? Long-term is how do we prevent this from ever happening again? And so we can just put the list the short-term solution for this instance. List long-term solution for process change to prevent going forward. All right. And now we've got a form here that basically they can see this once they click in. They can just delete that, spell out the issue, and then you'll have it there. Let's see if I can. Issue. All right. So that's step one, is basically you're going to have an issue, and as you work through this, you're going to be filling this out. The next step is let's collect some specific information, and here's where we really start to get into using some of the extras here. We're going to add a power-up for custom fields. So Trello has all these things that you can add, and I'm looking for one called custom fields. Here it is. So I'm going to add this power-up. It adds it over here on the side where I can get all my features, and I'm going to get out of this. I now have right here under this power-up section an area for custom fields. This is some of the information that I'm going to want to collect on all of this. And so I'm going to add some fields really quick. I want to know for every problem, who's the supplier? I want to know who the customer is. I'd like also the purchase order number. As well as the lot number. This would be my traceability number. Now, as you can see with these new fields, you can create checkbox, dates, drop downs, numbers. So we'll eventually get to some of that. Let me think about what else it is. I wanted to look at the quantities. So let's do, so this will be numbers, and we'll say the quantity ordered. Quantity delivered. Sometimes that'll be 0 if we catch it before we deliver any. And the quantity, I should say issue quantity. If we've got 20,000 parts and we found an issue with 2 parts, it might just be an anomaly. If we order 20,000 parts and we have an issue with 10,000 of them, that's another problem. So understanding the severity of the issue. And again, not everybody's going to think about it in the right way. So helping them gather the right information so that I can make a decision or somebody else can make a decision quickly is really what creating this form is all about. And this is predicated on doing proper process mapping and what information you need for that decision before you make this. The other thing we can do with custom fields is reorder it. So for example, I actually want purchase order all the way at the bottom. You can see that it does 3 across. So basically I want my supplier, customer, lot. I want my 3 quantities, and then any additional information can go here at the bottom. Something else I'd like them to do is a checklist. And so we're going to add a checklist here called pre-decision. All right. And for pre-decision, we just want them to do a couple of things really quickly. We want them to add the print. We want them to fill out the description. And we want them to do a root cause analysis. And so, for example, adding the print might be something, I don't think I have any files here. Let me pull up just a file. Let's say that I've got these PDF prints of all these different parts. And let me pull up one of them. So let's say this is a print here. I'm going to drag it over. It's easy as that, drag and drop. Now it goes into the attachments. You can actually rename these if you want. I find there's no need to. But now anybody who looks up this card is going to see this print here. So that's when I say add print, that's what I mean, attached to the card. Now this is a template, so I don't want it here. But you'll see as we start to actually use this how it becomes helpful in gathering information. As far as our template, I think this is all that we want. The last thing we really need to do is we need to create what I call tags. In part 3 of this build, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can start to measure a lot of the activity here, graph it, get email reports on it. And so anything we want measured or we want to try and track, we need to create some type of label for. So up here you can see labels. Now, I'm going to create a couple off the top of my head from my experience. One of the things I'm going to want to know is it a quality action? In other words, is this an official quality problem that has been documented? And so I'm going to do create quality action, and that's going to be red. Another thing I'm going to want to know is this on hold? In other words, am I waiting on something? Can I not ship this? A lot of times you can have your warehouse guys look this up in Trello really quick, and they can see, oh, this is on hold. I can't ship this lot. So let's create an on hold label. What else may I want? Cage. Often there's a rejection cage inside of any kind of parts or machine shop or any kind of parts manufacturer. This cage has parts locked in it, usually according to the ISO 9000. And so we're going to create a cage label that basically just shows us if this part is in the cage or not. What else might we want to track? I want to track if it's conditional lot. This just tells us if the lot is wrong but still accepted. So it's accepted on some kind of condition. We'll give that a green. And so let's say these are the things that we'd like to track. We want to track how many parts are in the cage. We want to track how many issues are open at one time, how many parts are on hold, and then how many conditional lots that we've got. And again, this will make more sense in part 3, but we kind of need to create these now. So all of that, I can now just get out of this card. I'm actually going to pull these tags off because we don't want them on the template. Here we now have a template card. So what we can now do is create a card from the template. It gives us this, our part number and rev. So let's say our part number is that, revision 3. We create the card. And as you can see, we've got our whole template or our digital form set up. So I can go in here and say, parts came in 0.02 too short. Root cause, I don't know yet. You can start to fill this out kind of as you get answers. The italics that I used helps keep it different from regular text. So you can tell what you still have to fill out and what you don't need to. One mistake I just saw, so if you see it's all italics except for this list long-term, probably because I forgot the end asterisk. To fix that and make any changes to your template, all you need to do is go over, add it to the template, and from now on, any cards you make will have that change. So we open this up, we can see now that that's italics. So this is a really powerful way, an easy way to not only create digital forms, but you can modify templates within seconds and they're immediately implemented into the operations of the business. Let me do that. And so what we do now is the way that our flow works is anytime you email a supplier, you just grab the email for this card right here, and then you pull up your email system. Whenever you email a supplier, give me one sec. Whenever you email a supplier, all you'll say is you'll CC the card, and then you can say, dear supplier, we found X, Y, and Z with 458524. And also anything that you attach to your email, I'm gonna email it to myself. I send my email to my supplier. And what you'll see is it all shows up here. So now I've got in my comments, I've got my actual email history. I've got an attachment that it brought along with it. Here's my attachment. And as we go back and forth with customers and suppliers, we just keep that blind CC. You can blind CC or regular CC. I usually blind CC to customers and then open CC to suppliers. That way when they respond, it also automatically goes back into here. And I can basically start to track how everything's going. So I created an issue. I'm going to assign it so it can go into there. Right now I'm the only one. Let's just say we want to assign it to someone else. Assign it. When I start to work on it, I bring it over to in progress, and here's where it sits as I go back and forth gathering information and data. So I can say we ordered, I can pull up the PO, it was purchase order 10425. Ordered 20,000, they delivered 20,000. So far I have an issue with 250. I got the supplier, which is maybe my customer is GE, and I have some unique lot number that I use to trace it. And so now as we gather more information, it gets collected in this card. You can have a history of everything that happened with this card. All right, so what we've done here is we've basically built this digital form that we can track. The more issues there are, the more this board will fill out, and then the more you'll see the tracking and auditing later on. So this is part one of kind of building this digital quality board. As we finish these out, completed, we'll get more and more full. Then we can use search to really search all of this information, trying to find how we resolved issues with parts or suppliers or customers. Any kind of unique ID we can then look at and start to understand better. How did we fix it before? You can start to scale that. You get a real useful repository of information on fixing issues. So I hope this was helpful. In part two, we're going to connect this to a communication hub so that we can both create, edit, and track and audit issues, how they're being resolved and their timeliness. And then in step three, we're going to connect it to a reporting software so that we can get updates, graphs, emails like that, email to both quality manager, to the manager, and then to the CEO. So again, going to be building this out over 3 different sessions. This was just the actual form on Trello. Hope this was helpful, and I hope it kind of gives you some ideas of how you might be able to use Trello too.